This is the Financial Beat, helping you hit all the right notes in your financial plan. So sit back as we strike up the band. The Financial Beat with Logan Sadler starts now.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Financial Beat. As they say, the beat goes on week after week. Logan Sadler is on the radio again, so go tell everybody you know Logan's on the radio. He's going to say some very important stuff. I just have a feeling he is. All about getting to and through retirement. My name is Ryan Stutz, and Logan, I'm glad to be back with you on the radio show.
Yeah, me too. Another week of giving some good education and some value here to some listeners, and sounds like we're going to have a good show.
Got a lot to talk about today, and first of all, let me put your phone number out there because that is so important, as we have said so many times. 888-823-PLAN. 888-823-PLAN is the first number you should call if you're thinking about getting to and through retirement, doing it in the most efficient way possible, and that includes being tax efficient as well. 888-823-PLAN. Logan Sadler, the Vice President, Chief Investment Officer at Regary Financial, serving you in Southern California. Offices in Hemet and Redlands. 888-823-PLAN. Hey, Logan, I know that we just recently got some news from the IRS, and it's going to affect a lot of people, so bring us up to date on all of that.
Yeah, the IRS came out with their inflation-adjusted contribution limits and stuff that they're coming out with, also some tax charts and stuff. So, all the 401ks, anybody out there listening, I'd say these rules typically, or these changes affect pretty much everybody out there. I mean, anybody that has a 401k, IRA, 403b, any of that stuff, they actually are increasing the limits for 2023 coming up. So 401ks and employer plans, most of those will increase up to $22,500. That's from just $20,500 last year. And the 50 and older catch-up contribution is now up to it's actually right at $30,000 now you can contribute per year to those. So wow. Some pretty big increases, and that followed over to the individual side as well. So, I mean, on the IRA and Roth IRA side, it's now $6,500 if you're under age 50. And if you're over age 50, it's up to $7,500. So some good little increases there. And you know me, Ron, I like to play a little math in my head, but I was just kind of running through some of those projections and on some of our clients that we're working with on their plans and saying, hey, you were already right there with the last catch-up contributions and how those were working. If we followed suit on the, keeping the increase going there, it makes a pretty big difference there over, multiple years, adding that difference. So nice they gave us some breathing room and a little extra contributions for some of us out there that were able to keep increasing those. Yeah,
that sounds really good. It's good news for folks. And if you want to have more of a conversation, a longer conversation about this, you want to know how it's specifically going to affect you, well, then call Logan's office and get a conversation. Again, there's no cost, no obligation. 888-823-PLAN. Here we are the week of Halloween, and I was just wondering about financial planning and Halloween and what we might be able to learn about financial planning from celebrating this crazy holiday. What's something in the financial world that you believe is wearing a costume? And by that, I mean, it appears to be something that it really isn't.
Yeah, I would say probably annuities. And what I mean by that is I would say they're probably very misunderstood or misleading in some cases, right? There's so much turmoil out there in the financial world about there's certain people out there that have investment ads that say, I hate annuities too, or things of that sort. Yeah. There's just so much either really, really positive stuff out there. You hear from certain advisors and it sounds like these annuities are the holy grail. And then you hear from some of these other people, worst decision you could ever make, right? So It's always wearing a mask, I feel, one way or another. And they could be misleading because, as we talk about, Ron, there's so many different types of annuities out there, right? There's some of them that are fixed. They are like a CD. Some of them are market-based, so meaning you get performance of the upside of the market, but most of them have a 0% floor, meaning you can't lose any money. And then some of them are variable, so some of them are actually in the market, right? So it just kind of, to me, there's just so many things to unpack when it comes to annuities, and it is one of the tools that we use sometimes for clients if they're a good fit. And it's funny because when we begin doing the education on them, it is quite interesting when a lot of clients say, hey, I didn't know that, or I have heard that, but maybe I misunderstood it, right? To me, there's a lot of education that's not out there on those, that people aren't properly educated on those, because again, they can be a great fit. I'm one of those advisors where I've seen them be a really great fit for some people, certain types of annuities, and then there's other cases where it makes absolutely no sense to have one, right, depending on your situation. So I would say that's probably one of the things out there wearing a costume that gets some people very, very confused, and I think it definitely deserves some, if you're approaching retirement and you got assets and you're looking at different things, it's one of those types of assets, I feel, that does need to be looked at and see if it could be a piece of your financial plan. It shouldn't be all of your financial plan, but definitely make sure you're getting the proper education to see if it is something that could fit into your situation correctly.
And as you said, there's so many different types of annuities, and some of those variable annuities.
Yeah, very, very Halloween scary. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it is. It's funny because I always do that when clients, if a client said, hey, Logan, I don't want to take much risk. Maybe I don't want any risk at all. I'm looking for a small piece of the portfolio just to have some cash flow from that's guaranteed. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, it sounds like you're looking for maybe a fixed index annuity that provides guaranteed cash flow and it has no market risk, right? And they'll go, well, aren't all annuities, don't they lose a lot of money and have very, very high fees? And it's like, well, you're talking about a variable annuity, which is not even close to apples, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You're right, definitely a lot of misconceptions on those.
Well, while we're in the subject of Halloween here, what is the scariest issue that today's retirees and pre-retirees are facing?
Yeah, that's, what's funny is I would say that one's pretty easy to answer. And how I'm answering this is, as you guys know, listen to the show, I talk about a lot of different clients and radio listeners have came in over the years, and so I have some pretty good experience meet with a lot of different people that are approaching retirement or maybe just starting. And the most common worry for all of them is still the same, is running out of money. I mean, when I say that, I mean, that has to be nothing scarier, right? Than if you're in retirement, you're 60 or 70 years old, and whether the market went bad or whether you took too much money out or whatever happened, and all of a sudden you were out of money. That's a pretty terrifying thing where a lot of us at that point might not be able to go back to work, or for sure probably don't want to, right? So I would say running out of money is still the number one concern. And I ask a lot of basically everybody that comes in when we're building you a financial plan and you're coming on board, I ask that question, what is your top 3 biggest concerns? And almost all the time, number 1 or number 2 is running out of money, right? I mean, you still have the other ones like, man, I'm worried about tax rates going up, which is a big concern. I'm worried about long-term care. I'm worried about the market. All of those are still big, but still in today's world, the number one biggest concern I meet with people when I'm meeting with people is I'm worried I'm going to run out of money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and some people, lie awake at night so worried about it. So, why get so stressed out? Talk to Logan Sadler about this, and you can take care of that little problem. In what ways do you see people behaving illogically with their money? I mean, so illogical that it almost seems as if they're acting on superstition.
That's a great question. I mean, I would say there's a couple things where I would say it comes down to 2 things. I would say probably not thinking past tomorrow, right? There's a lot of people where, whether they make really good money or not, or whether they have assets or not, it doesn't necessarily fall into that category. I've seen some clients where their financial plan is literally as long as the day is, right? They don't really think past that. You're going to live forever. You'll always make good money and things will always be okay. Until all of a sudden you get older or you want to retire or something happens to your spouse or whatever, right? All these things that can kind of become what we call life, right? Come into effect. So I would say the one thing is that people not thinking long-term, thinking very short-term, not thinking past tomorrow. And the other one is typically improper planning. I see some clients where they're not really following, they're not really thinking logically, right? I mean, maybe they say, hey, Logan, you know what, I've saved, I was meeting with a client actually a few weeks ago, and she has a good amount of money put away, and she's got about $400,000 put away in retirement accounts. She has a little pension coming in when she's ready to retire, and she is 58 years old, and the plan was 65, right? That was her whole goal. And, she comes in and says, hey, you know what, Logan, I'm going out this year because you never know what's going to happen in life, right? And I go, well, I understand that she had been going through a lot of family changes, I would say. And I understand that thought process, but when you lay out the fundamentals of what the plan looked like coming out now versus 65, she was going to have to be able to take, a huge reduction in income. Her pension was different. You got to pay for health insurance. All these other topics were coming up that wouldn't have been an issue down the road. And, very illogical thinking, right? Just thinking, okay, you know what? A lot of stuff's going on. I'll just retire. And I had told her, why don't you think on this? Come back in 2 weeks and let's reconvene and kind of go over things, because you got to think this is a big decision. You got to make sure you're thinking through all of the pros and cons and making sure it really is the best decision and not just kind of a leap of faith, so to speak.
Yeah. We're talking about financial planning and Halloween. And Logan, let's say that you are making a witch's brew and throwing a whole bunch of different financial tools and strategies into that big old cauldron. What are the ingredients that you would use if you were making a potion for a retiree or a pre-retiree?
Yeah, that's a really great point. Probably one of my favorite things to talk about. And I get asked that a lot, right? What's the best type of retirement or plan, or where do you start in your process?
You get asked about your cauldron a lot.
Well, yeah, not my potions, so to speak, but my financial planning, right?
Yeah, really.
Really, what I always say, I'm very big on this. I always say there's lots of tools out there, right? There's stocks, there's bonds, mutual funds, real estate, pensions, Social Security, all that stuff. But I believe that every good retirement plan starts with a very strong income plan. Right? That's the whole point of retiring, is to be able to have a paycheck coming in to support that ideal lifestyle, whether that's sitting on the couch watching the news all day, whether that's traveling, seeing the grandkids, staying active, playing golf, whatever it is, right? It all starts with a paycheck. And I feel that every good retirement plan that's very solid has those guaranteed income streams. It has income that's going to be there when you need it, as well as it has different income streams, right? So you might have things like, as you guys know, listening, that have listened a while, we are licensed to use a lot of different tools. So when I'm building a plan, some of our clients might have income streams from structured notes, from real estate investments like privately traded REITs, dividends, fixed index annuities, pensions, Social Security. I mean, there's so many different income streams that I think we could definitely put into play for most people to make it a very strong and dependable income, and one you can count on. And that's where I think most good retirement plans start with. And the next one is tax control. I feel like it's very, very important with any good retirement plan. The income plan is important, but also if we can control taxes during current tax brackets, as well as if tax brackets went up in the future, how would it be, how would it impact that overall retirement? And that's really where we start the basis of our plan with most of our clients is, hey, okay, we've done really well. We've worked, 30 or 40 years. We've put ourselves in a good situation. I'm retiring in a few months or next year, or I just retired. How do I get a good plan put together? And that's where we start with, Ron, is getting that income plan laid out, where how much income do we need? Right? How long do we want it to last is very important. How long are we going to live? All those things, as well as we look at inflation, as well as tax planning to see how we can make this income stream and this retirement plan successful over this next, 20 or 30 years that could be called retirement. So I feel that's very important when constructing a plan.
Yeah, planning for retirement these days is a lot more complicated than it used to be in previous generations because, Logan just mentioned people live longer these days, and you may be in retirement as long as you were in the workplace, which is really amazing to think about, but it's true, right, Logan?
It is. I mean, it's crazy to think, right? I mean, some of us, if we stayed at home with kids or got a late start in our careers, maybe we worked 20 years or maybe 30, and I have some clients that retire at 55 and they're now 95, right? Mm-hmm. Or older. So, it's one of those things where when you're doing a comprehensive financial plan, you need to make sure, and that's part of what we do, but you need to make sure that you have all of those bases covered. We call it the 5 pillars of retirement planning. We feel, and most of the plans that I review from callers coming in don't have these, and you want to make sure you have each of these 5 pillars covered in your comprehensive financial plan. One of them is income planning. We need to make sure we have, like I said, most importantly, the guaranteed income coming in or reliable income coming in. We need to make sure our investment planning is very diversified and comprehensive. We need to make sure we have a tax plan. How is this going to look on a tax basis, as well as if we passed away? How does that look from a legacy standpoint, right? We got to make sure we understand the taxes and legacy play, as well as what happens with healthcare and long-term care and stuff like that in the future. So if you're one of those people out there getting close or maybe just starting retirement, it's probably time to give us a call and come in for our complimentary discovery meeting, where basically we do a full review over what assets you have, what type of retirement plan you may have or want to have, and we really start building the building blocks to put those pieces in place to make sure you have the 5 pillars of retirement planning covered in your financial plan.
If you want a comprehensive financial plan for getting to and through retirement, call Logan Sadler's office, 888-823-PLAN. That is 888-823-PLAN. Convenient offices in Hemet and also Redlands. And you can have a conversation first on the phone. It's called a discovery meeting, or you might want to progress to a Zoom connection. Whatever the case may be, Logan Sadler would love to spend a few minutes talking with you. And he works with 3 different generations of folks. So whatever age you are, if you're concerned about getting to and through retirement, call Logan Sadler's office at Regary Financial. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call to make it happen. There will be no cost and no obligation involved with that conversation. I'm Ron Stutz along with Logan Sadler. You're listening to the Financial Beat, and there's more coming up in just a moment.
At the end of the day, no one truly understands your financial wants and desires better than you. That's why it's important to have financial independence. This means you can work when you want, you know exactly where your income is coming from, and most importantly, your finances are stable. If this sounds like something you want, well, text the word advice to the number 21000. And Logan Sadler and his team at Regary Financial can provide you with their free guide on achieving financial independence. The free guide will show you how to create an action plan for getting to where you want to be. It'll explain how to calculate a financial independence goal. And it'll define what an ice egg is and why it's so important. Download it now by texting the word advice to the number 21000. Again, text the word advice to the number 21000 to gain your financial independence today.
Do you ever find yourself skipping through countless songs trying to find the perfect one? Yeah, we've been there too, and know it can be frustrating. Much like skipping through the countless advertisements from other financial advisors, it can seem like there's so much misinformation. But here on the Financial Beat, you can rest assured we're providing you with the best information possible. So don't push skip on this show, because we have some important information coming up.
Welcome back to the Financial Beat, starring the one and only Logan Sadler, working with 3 different generations of client families at Regary Financial. Many of those clients have been with the firm more than a quarter of a century. And if you are not a client of Regary Financial, we appreciate your listening today. You may become one, but all you got to do is call this number and have a discovery meeting. Discover things about Regary Financial, about Logan Sadler. They can discover things about you, and they can offer you a complete assessment of where you are right now. And if you can't get where you want to go in retirement by doing things the way you're doing them right now, they can provide a way for you to make it happen, but you got to reach out with that phone call. 888-823-PLAN. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call for Regary Financial. Call, leave a message with your name and number, 888-823-PLAN. The values that people were taught growing up, or the economic conditions that they lived through as children, often have a significant effect on how they view money as adults. And I'm hoping that you can explain how you've seen these different upbringings manifest themselves in folks' financial mindsets many years later. For people who lived through the Great Depression as a child, how did that usually affect their financial behavior as adults?
Yeah, it's something where, I mean, come on, that was one of the biggest things in history is to look back on that time frame. Obviously, you had a world war that came, not too long after all that, but it was something where I always say you probably have heard these stories, right? Everybody listening has heard these stories. Maybe it was maybe it was your mom, maybe it was your dad, maybe it was your grandpa or great grandpa or grandma, and it's one of those things where it was just to me, it was such an impact, and it shaped so many people of that generation to really kind of have those values throughout the rest of their life, right? We all have those stories. Maybe they were just, after that, they became so tight and very, very smart with money, right? They did not live outside their means. A lot of them saved almost every dollar they ever made, and it really shaped their whole life to maybe not trust the banks or traditional investments or things of that sort, right? Because they went through such a hard time or traumatic time, most people in that generation. So, we have clients here that are obviously, I actually had one that was actually still around during that time. And it's something where that generation is just totally different. I feel that every type of situation you go through, it has a shape of how it shapes you for how you view money or how you view financials. And that generation is no different. It definitely had an overall impact on how they view traditional investments or money or saving money or budgeting. All of that stuff had a huge, huge impact.
You remember that old song by Stephen Bishop, "Save It for a Rainy Day"?
Yeah.
Sort of thought about that because
no lie,
those folks have that mindset, that's for sure. And I know my mother-in-law grew up during the Depression, and that's the way she was. She thought about money that way.
It's such an impact.
Yeah. For people who grow up very poor, what kind of relationship do they usually have with money when they get to be adults?
You know what's interesting is that can go a couple different ways, right? I've seen it happen both. Not all the time, but most of the time you'll see it two ways. Where maybe if they grew up without something, when they grow up and they get something, they just want to have everything, right? Yeah. They they didn't get to eat out at all growing up, so maybe they eat out 3 days a week, right? Or they didn't get to have a nice sit-down dinner, so they have almost every dinner is a nice sit-down dinner, right? They maybe live very lavishly because it's something they didn't have. They didn't drive nice cars, or parents didn't drive nice cars, so now they have 2 nice cars, right? Yeah. So you see it that way sometimes. And I've also seen it the extreme other way, where maybe it's kind of like that Great Depression story, where maybe they really value money because they know what it took for them to get there. You know, it's some people that come from nothing, their biggest fear is to go back to that, right? So their biggest fear is to lose maybe their money or their job or whatever. So they're very, very appreciative and do all the right things and maybe kind of live very tight or live very purposeful with where they're putting money. And it can have that effect. I've seen it, like I said, both ways. And it's interesting because I think there's a good way to find kind of in the middle there, but it definitely has an impact on how you grew up. And like I was saying at our discovery meeting, that's my favorite question to ask that I think a lot of advisors don't ask clients or ask people that they're meeting with because it doesn't seem important. But to me, I think it's super important. I ask people all the time, what is your background with money? What does money mean to you? How did you grow up? I ask a lot of those questions because it gets people to kind of open up to me about how they view it. To some people, it's everything, right? To some people, it's nothing. And it means a lot when you're looking at the overall financial plan on how people value money or what their experience has been.
Okay. On the other side of the coin, there's some people out there who grew up in a wealthy family and always had money and never lacked for anything. Do they usually end up achieving great wealth themselves as an adult?
That's a tough one, too. I've seen it go both ways. We've all probably had kids or family members or whoever we grew up with or have known at work or whatever, that maybe their parents or family was super, super wealthy, and they just kind of lived off that, right? They just thought, man, hey, my parents are rich, so I'm good, right? Yeah. And maybe they got a little too much handed to them throughout the years, and they didn't really appreciate it. And maybe they didn't go to school or didn't get a good job or didn't do those things. But I have seen it the opposite way, where sometimes those families have better conversations with their kids around money, right, or about hard work, or about the importance of having education in that realm. So I've seen it kind of both ways, but I definitely have seen it, like I said, both ways, and I've seen it work out positively and negatively on both those, whether you grew up with money or without money. And it's something that I think it does have a shape of how you understand things and what your kind of goals are, right? Because it could be, both of those can be very, I'd say have a very good impact on you or a negative impact on you on how you view those categories as far as money goes.
I think impactful is the word you were searching for there.
That's a good word, impactful. There you go. A lot better than mine.
You're listening to the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, and we're talking about how you grew up. And it affects the way you feel about money after you become an adult, for sure, in a variety of ways. How do most families communicate about money? Do you find that most families communicate about money in a productive way or an unhealthy way or just not at all?
You know what? It's kind of somewhere in between. I have had some clients that come in and, like I said, it could be a client from a wealthy background or a poor background, whatever the background is, but I've had a lot of clients I feel like lately want to have their kids educated on money. And I think it's one of those things that most of us could probably agree on, that, schools are great, teachers work very hard, all of that stuff. But I think a lot of our educational system doesn't focus on that, right? You have to take kind of a finance class in college to understand some of the variables out there. Like you can graduate high school and not even know how to, well, checkbooks aren't really a big thing anymore, but not really understand what a credit card is, right? Or, how to write a check, or what the value of how debt impacts you, right? So a lot of us aren't brought up with those conversations, but I feel it's more common now to want to be educated on that stuff, or have your kids at least have some knowledge. So I've had some great conversations with some clients that come on board with our firm and maybe have been with us for a while, and they say, hey, would you mind having a 10-minute call or a half-hour call with my son or daughter, or can I bring them in and just kind of talk to them about what a 401k is, or how it could make a difference, right? How to balance a budget. How much should we be spending per month? What type of house could I afford? Those types of conversations, I feel I've just had a lot lately. And over the last few years, they've been kind of slowly increasing. And that makes me feel that most people out there are trying to get a little bit more knowledge out there and have those more open conversations about how to be productive with not wealth, but how to be productive with money and be accountable with those. I think that's a huge conversation that's going around more. That's why people are checking out the YouTube channels and stuff like that on financial education. I think it's a growing topic that I'm very, very happy to get out there and share some of that message.
Very important to have that conversation. It's also very important to have a conversation with a good financial advisor, and I would recommend Logan Sadler. Logan, why is it so important for folks to call into your office and get that discovery meeting now?
Yeah, it's a super volatile time, right? There's always a lot going on in the world, and there's things changing all the time, rules coming out, taxes are, could potentially be changing down the road, all these different variables that are out there. And I feel like there's never been a better time to have a comprehensive financial plan. Those of you out there that are getting closer to retirement, or maybe just started and are looking for ways to, maybe you don't have a financial plan, or you think your current plan might have some cracks in it, and are looking for ways to maybe shore up and get a more rounded financial plan that would maybe get you better, situated better throughout this next coming years. I definitely think it's time to make that call. Like I always say, we are one of those firms that really likes to put the client first and making sure we understand what it is you're trying to accomplish, using the right investments and planning tools to get you there, and making sure we have a plan that is going to last the next 15, 20, or 30 years of this retirement. So again, give us a call. It doesn't cost anything to come in and just sit down and have a conversation and see if we can't be a good fit to work together and transition you into retirement.
888-823-PLAN. That is 888-823-7526. But the easy way to remember it is by using the word plan, which is so essential when you're putting together a retirement planning. Logan Sadler can help you get to and through retirement, help you realize the ambition and the dreams you've always had for your retirement lifestyle. 888-823-PLAN. That's your number to call to make it happen. And when you do have that discovery meeting, remember there's no cost for it and no obligation involved at all. 888-823-PLAN. Ron Stutz here along with Logan Sadler. We'll have more of the Financial Beat in just a moment after this quick timeout.
We all know Congress has approved trillions of dollars in spending the past year with stimulus packages, infrastructure plans, and other programs. It's all on top of the tens of trillions of dollars of debt our nation already owes. Yet we're living with some of the lowest tax rates in history. Now, how long do you think that's going to last? Learn how you can prepare for future tax implications by watching Logan Sadler of Regary Financial's exclusive webinar, How Tax Planning Changes Through the 4 Stages of Retirement. Just text the word advice to the number 21,000, and we'll text you back a link to the webinar right away. Text advice to 21,000 and make sure you don't have to pay a cent more in taxes than you have to. To access the free webinar right now, text advice to 21,000.
Did you know music is good for the heart? A study at a university in Italy showed that music helps promote a better cardiovascular system. But we also know that a sound financial plan is good for peace of mind. Keep listening to the Financial Beat so we can help you find a plan that both your head and your heart can agree on.
Welcome back. The beat goes on. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler at Regary Financial. He's the Vice President, Chief Investment Officer. And Logan has not only this radio show, but has a number of podcasts that are available. You can check out all shows, and also a bunch of YouTube videos that you can watch. And Logan, tell our new listeners, perhaps who don't know about this, how they can access all of that information.
Yeah, for those of you that like the radio show, you can head over to the podcast land, right? Whether that's Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon, wherever it is you listen to podcasts, and you could type in The Financial Beat with Logan Sadler, and there's over 70 episodes recorded and uploaded there of the full show that you could check out at your convenience. And there's, like I said, over 70 of them, so one of them is bound to be, specific to your situation, or at least give you some insight.
Yeah.
And as well as the YouTube channel, you can head over to YouTube. We created that a few months back where we wanted to give you guys more of a visual content for those of you that like to maybe look at some different tax planning topics or how to get risk right in your retirement. There's a lot of great videos over there on YouTube. You could type in The Financial Beat and it'll populate. Again, we do videos on that each week on different topics. So head over there and click subscribe.
888-823-PLAN is also a very big phone number to call, and you can arrange to have a discovery meeting with Logan by using that number, 888-823-PLAN. That is 888-823-PLAN. And if you didn't write that down, I will give it to you again just a little while here. Let's talk about inheritances, and let's call this Inheritance 101, and tackle some of the major questions that people have about getting an inheritance. Most people worry about the tax implications of money that they're getting in an inheritance. What do they need to know on that front?
Yeah, inheritance is something where we help a lot of clients that are already with us, with their kids helping it, as well as we have a lot of radio listeners that have called in over the years that are looking for some guidance on this topic. So definitely something we're familiar with. And I would say most of the reasons that you want to look at the tax implication is because most asset classes, account types, investments, they can all be taxed differently, right? So it's something where you really got to understand the tax treatment of those investments. I mean, you have Roth IRAs, traditional brokerage accounts, real estate, trust accounts. I mean, all of those can have a different tax impact to you or tax advantage to you. So you really got to make sure when we're looking at what assets we're inheriting, that's the first thing we talk about with our clients or people calling in is, hey, we need to verify what type of accounts these are, what they're invested in. That will give us a really good idea of how the tax treatment goes, because making the wrong mistake on that could be very costly in what the overall bottom line is of the inheritance.
Yeah. I know that we've talked about this in some of the past, but the Secure Act was just passed back in 2020, just a couple of years ago, and a lot of people still don't really understand how that works. The Secure Act affects people who are inheriting money in the future. Explain that, if you would.
Yeah, like you were saying, Ron, it was one of those things where a lot of people, it got passed basically right at the start of 2020, and a lot of people didn't really know about it because this thing happened right around then that was called COVID, right? So the whole world kind of went crazy, right, and things shut down and all this stuff happened, so it really got swept under the rug, and it really doesn't apply to a lot of people that are going through it until it happens, right? I mean, almost everybody out there has an IRA or a 401k, so I always say it does affect pretty much everybody out there. And how it works, Ron, like you said, is if you passed away, your IRA, let's use an example, right? You had $100,000. If you passed away, it could go to your wife and she can inherit the IRA, or your spouse, and everything would be normal. She could use it like her IRA. But it's when it goes to the kids is when it gets very, very tricky. They created what's called a 10-year rule. So meaning, traditionally speaking, all of the money has to be out of that IRA, out of mom and dad's IRA in 10 years. Now, for a lot of people, they say, well, okay, what's the impact there, right? What's the big change? So before, you used to be able to inherit that IRA and stretch it out, and it's called the stretch IRA, and take a small distribution each year, and the kids can pretty much defer taxes on the most of that money until their retirement, right? Until they wanted to use it for their retirement. Well, I'm actually working on a case, and I've had this happen several times. And this is why we think tax planning ahead of time is so important, because I'm going to give you an example. I have one of our clients, she passed away, and she had about $1 million in IRA that she had accumulated, right, which was awesome. She did really well, put away the perfect amount of money she needed to have her lifestyle and all that stuff. Well, long story short, let's use Johnny and Sarah as their name, right? She had 2 kids. So that $1 million, she passed away. So now her kids, right, each inherited $500,000 each of all IRA money. Now, how this works is they got to take it out over 10 years. So essentially, right, with no growth, let's just use simple numbers, it's $50,000 per year for the 10 years. The problem is Johnny was married and he made, around $150,000 a year. Here's the big kicker to this rule. That $50,000 is taxable at ordinary income rates, right? So that means that Johnny was making $100,000, $150,000 a year. That $50,000 added on now puts him at a $200,000 a year tax bracket.
Yeah.
So on that extra income over that bracket, it put him in that 24% tax bracket, right? Which was a big difference on the taxes. So the whole point of this is on that inheritance, a lot of the times your kids might actually be in a higher tax bracket than you are because a lot of them are working and making good money and doing well for themselves. So the problem is they're netting a lot less of that inheritance due to taxes. And in Sarah's case, she was actually single and made really good money as well. So it pushed her up even into a higher tax bracket. So it's something where the planning ahead of time on things like Roth conversions or backdoor Roths or some of these other strategies to maybe help relieve some taxes down the road was huge, because the Secure Act is something where anybody out there inheriting a 401k or an IRA, you need to make sure you understand the impacts of those rules and doing things right, because the whole point of inheritance, right, or us leaving behind money to the kids or inheriting money as the kid, you want to make sure you do the most responsible thing with those assets and those dollars and make sure you're getting the most out of them. So having a tax mindset on that is very important.
Yeah, we talk so much about how there's certain strategy involved, and so many of these things are strategic, and you need to make sure that you have it planned out well, so that you don't leave a big tax burden to your family or whoever you're leaving that money to. What are some common mistakes that you see people make with their estates that make things harder for their beneficiaries? I mean, you just talked about one, but are there other examples?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I would say some of the most common ones, I'll just throw this out there, right? I have some clients where they'll be coming in or maybe not even clients yet. Maybe they'll just be kind of interviewing our firm, came in for the discovery meeting, and we'll kind of lay everything out there, take a deep dive into their situation, and really try to get a feel for them and what they're trying to accomplish and what their goals are. And it's crazy because I see some people where they might have, maybe 10 different IRA accounts with 3 different financial advisors. They got maybe an old trust that hasn't been reviewed. They have 6 different bank accounts, right? They have 3 different real estate investments, and some of them are in the trust, some of them are not, right? So when I look at that, it gives me a headache sometimes, right? It's hard for me to get it straight as a financial advisor, and sometimes they don't even know where everything's at, right? They're like, well, I think I had $50,000 at Chase Bank, but it might have been 20, and that might have been the other one at Bank of America, right? Yeah. So it's something where they have done well, they put themselves in a good situation, but a lot of the times they have things just kind of scattered all over the place. And what happens is they don't do that on purpose. What happens is you're working, life's busy, you get going, you kind of open an account here as you go, you move a job or two, and you get your trust done. All of a sudden it's been 10 years, right? All this stuff kind of slips away from us. And that's part of what we do as the advisor, is really making sure that let's make this as simple as possible. And I always tell people I'm a very good people person, but I'm probably one of the worst salespeople out there, right? Because what I always say is, here's my advice, and and I tell them this, whether you're coming on board with our firm or not, my recommendation is find one financial advisor that you feel can, best guide you and give you what you need as far as what you're looking for from a financial advisor, whether that's, hopefully it's us, but if it's not, I understand. But you want to make sure you're getting one person that has access to all these different tools that you might need, can keep everything organized. You find 1 or 2 bank accounts at the most that you like, right? Maybe you have a savings here and a money market over there or whatever it is. Keep things as simple as possible. Keep everything under one roof and make sure it's as organized as it could be. Yes, for the kids, it's super, super important for the kids and the beneficiaries, but it's also important for you, because the problem is it gets harder and harder to stay organized sometimes as we get older. So it's a huge, huge thing we do with all of our clients, is to keep it as clean and simple as possible.
You talked about common mistakes that you see people make with their estates that may make it harder for their beneficiaries, but flip the coin. What are some common mistakes that you see people make after getting an inheritance?
Yeah, I mean, this could be something where we've all had a family member or a friend where maybe we thought they inherited money or knew they inherited money, and maybe it looked like they did the right things with it or whatnot. One of the biggest things I would say is you really want to make sure you are making strong and I don't want to say smart, but informed decisions when it comes to financial planning, when it comes to the inheritance, because as we mentioned, there's so many different rules and taxes and all these different things that could potentially come up with those to make sure that they could be very impacted by what decisions you make. One of the things I always say is I have a few different people. One of the things I always say when we're going through this, like for example, I had a client call in a few weeks ago on the radio show actually, and they had inherited a little bit of money and were kind of unsure what to do. And here's kind of what I say to almost everybody on how to do this is it's very important. There's a few steps you take. Number one, I would say you gather up all the information you can. You get all the documents, maybe the trust, accounts, whatever you have access to. You gather all that up. You contact a good financial advisor. Like I said, hopefully that's us. And basically, you give us a call, and you come in. And here's what we do: is we review all the documents, make sure we have an idea of kind of where everything's at, how things were set up, what are some of the tax implications on those, and then the next thing you do is you get a good estate planning attorney, and we connect you with one of those as well with a CPA. And that way, you have a full team to make sure that we're making the right decisions with this money to get the most out of it. Because again, depending on the amount, it could be something where it could be, a huge blessing as well as sometimes a huge curse, right, if not done correctly. So you want to make sure you're taking all the proper steps to do the right things with it. I've seen clients that have inherited money and they've done, amazing things with it. They've invested the right money. They maybe bought properties, or they, set up things for their grandkids, or did whatever, and made sure it was very responsible and things were set up kind of how their parents probably would envision they would do. And it makes me feel good knowing that people sometimes do the right things with those assets. But I've also seen it the other way, right, where people have inherited. I have some people I know that have inherited maybe $200,000 or $300,000, and for some people that's a lot of money, and they've blown through it in a year. Right? They didn't have any idea what to do. They just took money here and there, and maybe it was an IRA. It was taxable. They were under the age, right? All these different things that can kind of come up. If you don't do things correctly, you only get typically one shot at that, right? Most of us are only counting on, we might only have, if we're lucky, we might have maybe one inheritance coming. I mean, some of us have none, right? So when you have that one thing coming, if it does come, you want to make sure you're using that to the maximum, right? Making sure everything you're doing is thought out and well positioned to make sure it's benefiting you like your parents or grandparents or whoever's assets those would have wanted you to do. So it's super, super important, and that's something we help people with all of the time. So if you're one of those people that maybe just inherited some money and looking for some ways to maybe position that to be more effective and kind of understand the impacts of that, I think it's definitely time you give us a call. We'd love to sit down and spend an hour with you and shed some light on what we could bring to your financial plan.
888-823-PLAN. That is 888-823-PLAN. Your number to call to have a conversation with Logan Sadler. What he was just talking about here just reminds me of so many people who win the lottery, and then a couple of years later, they have nothing, It just
you hear about it all the time.
Blow right through it. And, the same thing can happen with an inheritance. It's important to do the right thing and make sure you're efficient with the way that you handle things, and make sure that you're tax efficient as well. The number to call if you'd like to talk about all of that and have a discovery meeting with Logan Sadler, 888-823-PLAN. And let me just add that when you do call this number, you will need to leave a message with your name and phone number, but you'll then get a call back from someone in the office who will set up a time for you to have that discovery meeting, that conversation, and you're going to have that conversation with Logan Sadler. Same guy you hear on the radio here. He's not going to pass you off on anybody else. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call to make it happen. Logan, of course, and the folks at Regari Financial have terrific partnerships with local CPAs, attorneys, real estate agents, mortgage lenders, Medicare specialists as well, to offer well-rounded guidance in all things financial for their clients. They're going to take a comprehensive look at everything, and you can get that for absolutely free with no obligation. 888-823-PLAN. Ron Stutz here along with Logan Sadler. You're listening to the Financial Beat, and the beat will go on in just a moment.
We talk a lot about creating a better 401k, but are we actually taking steps to do so? Maybe it's time to stop talking the talk and start walking the walk. By texting the word advice to 21,000, Logan Sadler can provide you with his 401k Action Steps, a guide that provides you with powerful information that could potentially save you thousands in taxes and fees and put you one step ahead when it comes to your retirement. So text the word ADVICE to the number 21,000 today for this special report. Text the word ADVICE to the number 21,000.
What is your name?
I'm Arthur, King of the Britons.
What is your quest?
To get retirement ready.
What is the PE ratio on your portfolio's top grossing products?
I don't know that.
Don't get blown to bits by complex jargon. Let Logan help you over the bridge to a meaningful retirement.
Welcome back to more of the Financial Beat with the one and only Logan Sadler. I like to say often imitated but never duplicated. There's nobody like him. Well, I don't know anybody else like Logan. And Logan, I think that's a good thing. So, hey.
Well, thank you.
You're unique. We're all unique.
We are.
888-823-PLAN is your number to call if you'd like to have a conversation with Logan about your financial situation. We're talking about getting to and through retirement. 888-823-PLAN is your number to call. If you would like well-rounded guidance in all things financial, 888-823-PLAN, you can have a discovery meeting. That's what we call it, where you get to know him, he gets to know you, and it's not going to cost you a penny. So, hey, it's a great opportunity. Why not take advantage of it? Speaking of getting to know you, who in your family would be described as a character?
That's a good question. Well, if I had to go broad, like, overall family, not just immediate, I would say I have an uncle, Charlie, who's definitely the character of the family. But if I had to go my siblings and my mom and dad, I would definitely say they'd probably throw me in that category. I thought I've always had a good sense of humor. They might think differently, but always enjoyed a good time and, been a little more outspoken on certain things or a little more wild. I was the youngest, so got to learn from them.
Yeah. And how about your immediate family? Anybody else you would describe as a character?
I would say it's probably out of my brothers and sisters and stuff like that. It's probably me.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
That's what I was going to say. I think that's a good thing, though.
It's a good thing, and I try to keep things interesting. But yeah, all of our whole family has a great sense of humor. We're all pretty outgoing, so it makes for an interesting time.
It's never boring.
No.
Let's go to the mailbag here. We have some good questions that have come in. First one is from Tom in Big Bear, and hope it's a good day in Big Bear, Tom. Tom says, I'm getting close to retirement age, and one of my employees is interested in buying my business from me. Would it be better to have him get a loan so that I get cash up front that I can invest? Or should I consider doing owner financing and just let him essentially cover my retirement income needs for the next several years? Yeah,
that's a really great question, Tom. It's funny, I actually do have quite a bit of experience in this area where we've had several clients. It feels like I've had, I think, 3 this year that have sold a business. So it's something where we're definitely familiar with the financing options and how that goes. We definitely would like to loop in our CPA, or if you have a good CPA you work with, it's something we would definitely connect with and kind of get some more advice from them as well. But basically, here's the values, I would say, or here's the trade-offs. A lot of the times I like maybe a mixture of the both. Like we've had 2 clients that I know of recently that just sold, and how it worked was one of them did, hey, it depends on what type of business it is too, I would say, Tom. Some of those businesses, maybe they want you around for a few years because it's transitioning, I would say. Like I have another client who sold a business where they wanted him around for 3 years. So he worked that into his, deal where he got X amount up front. And then he got, $100,000 a year of salary or whatever he wanted his salary to be for the 3 years that he was there. And then he got another balloon payment, I would call it, at the end, right? So, and the benefit to that is it splits it up tax-wise over a couple different years. And I have another client who just did a lump sum. Like she had a business that was worth, I think she sold it for right around $1.4 million. And it was awesome, by the way. A single woman, worked her butt off all those years, did really well, put money away, and had a valuable business. And anyway, she made the sell, and she did the 1.4. She did like $1 million up front, and then she carried the note on the other 400. So she got income on that, interest only over the next few years, over the next 4 years, right? So there's a lot of different ways to structure it. I'd like to have a little bit deeper of a conversation to kind of see what the goals are, what type of business is it, and how can we kind of structure those things, because there's a few different impacts I would say that could make a difference, and ones that maybe have some more advantages than the other, depending on other incomes and situations. But definitely something we could help you on, and you're kind of thinking down the right road there on how to split that up.
Great question, Tom. Thank you very much. And follow it up with a phone call to Logan's office and set up a discovery meeting, 888-823-PLAN. Next question here is from Irvine. Helen has a question. She says, our daughter is getting married at the age of 41. We're, of course, very happy for her, but I have to admit that after she made it through her 30s and still wasn't married, we didn't think this was going to happen for her. So we weren't really planning to help out financially with a wedding, but feel that we should do that since we helped our other daughter more than 15 years ago. We've only been taking RMDs from my IRAs so far. Is it okay to just pull out some additional IRA money for this?
Yeah, great question there. Got caught in one of those things, right, where it's like, hey, did it for the other sibling, got to do it for me, right? So definitely get that. And I understand your mentality of wanting to do that and doing that. I understand. There's some further questions I would have, though. One of the things I'd ask myself if I was your advisor or ask you is basically, what type of wedding are we talking about, right? Because some of these weddings nowadays could be anywhere from, $5,000 to $40,000, right? Depending on what type of dream wedding we're going for here, or if it's a shotgun wedding with Elvis, it depends on what type of wedding.
It's crazy.
Yeah, definitely. But that would determine it, because there's some advantages. If you are just taking RMDs out of your IRA, I don't know how much IRA you have or what tax bracket you're in or any of that information, but I would look at, what tax bracket are you in? How much could you take out in this year to keep you in that same tax bracket, as well as would it hurt your future income down the road off the RMDs you're living off of? But, maybe it might make sense if you take some this year and some next year to split it up tax-wise, just depending on the amount we're talking about. But if that's the only place you have to pull from and you wanted to, it sounds like that's where you got to pull from. But I would make sure you're looking at kind of the tax impact depending on the amount to make sure we're kind of doing this as efficiently as we can if that's how we got to go.
That's a great question, Helen. And again, call Logan's office and get a conversation, talk about this more so he can get more specific with his advice. Jenny has our last question of the day, and it's from Lake Elsinore. Jenny says, my dad has always been really sharp and good with his investments, but I'm starting to see some cognitive decline happening for him. When I look at his investments, it all looks very complex to me. Should I try to help him simplify this? And if so, how should I go about it?
Yeah, that's another, man, we've had 3 great questions again this week. So great question, Jenny. This is something I definitely have some experience with, helping clients navigate this, and or clients' kids as well. It's something where it's very tough because, like you said, your dad's probably been very sharp with the investments, like you were saying, and probably had a pretty good understanding at some point. But things do slip away sometimes, and I would say if you are not super familiar or super educated in this realm, I don't know if I would take it on myself. I would definitely, like I always say, you can give us a call and see if we're a good fit for you to help you out on that. But I would definitely call somebody, a financial advisor that specializes in finances and understands these topics, because if it's complex, if it looks very complex to you, it might be difficult to take it on. But it's definitely something where you probably should bring somebody in at this point, whether it's yourself or hiring somebody, because you definitely do want to try to simplify it. If he's already kind of losing some of that, capability, it's probably not going to get better with time, right? It might get worse. So it's something where I would definitely, if you're noticing it now, it might be the time to make the change and kind of bring somebody in that understands investments, tax planning, estate planning, all that stuff, to make sure things are set up properly, as well as, like you said, to simplify things. Because at that older age, there's a lot of stuff going on, like maybe taking income or taking RMDs, a lot of that different asset allocation that might be important depending on his risk. So you're thinking right. I would definitely probably say, like I said, if you're not super comfortable with this and don't have a background in it, then I would definitely make a call and get somebody in there that can give you some guidance, because you're definitely barking down the right tree there and have the right mindset on that.
Jenny, call Logan's office at Regary Financial. Logan, for not only Jenny and Helen and Tom who had the questions today, but for everybody listening to the show out there, they may have some very basic questions when it comes to their finances, getting to and through retirement. Why is this such a special time that people need to call in right now and get their ducks in a row?
Yeah, there's obviously just a lot going on in the world, and I feel like there's so many different things out there nowadays with rules and regulations and all this stuff going on, and there's never been a better time to have a good financial advisor that can help guide you through these changing environments and making sure that you have a plan in place that's going to be there when you need it. And a lot of us, listen to this show are probably pretty close to retirement or maybe just started, and it's time to make sure that things are set up the way you want them to be and make sure that you have no holes in your financial plan. Make sure everything is on rhythm and in beat to help carry you on into retirement, because there's a lot of variables going on out there. And typically as you get older, right, a lot of different things change. And I always say a lot of the times what got you to retirement won't get you through retirement, right? So you got to make some changes in making sure that the portfolio, your income plan, all of that stuff is as tight and as solid as it could be to carry you through this next phase of life. So give us a call. Again, as Ron always says, you're not pushing it off to anybody else. You're going to come in to one of our offices and meet with me or do a Zoom with me, and we'll take a deep dive and see if we can't bring some value to your retirement plan.
888-823-PLAN. That is 888-823-PLAN. Your number to call for a no-cost and no-obligation conversation. We call it a discovery meeting with Logan Sadler. Doesn't matter wherever you live in Southern California, Rancho Cucamonga, Orange County, Corona, Menifee, Temecula, wherever you are. If you're in Hemet or Redlands, remember that Logan Sadler and the folks at Regary Financial have convenient offices in both those locations, Redlands and Hemet. And the number to call, again, if you like a conversation that's not going to cost you a penny, call 888-823-PLAN. It's about time. You've been listening to this show for a long time and saying, I'm going to call one day. Why not make that day today? 888-823-PLAN. Ron Stutz here along with Logan Sadler. Logan, it's been fun, and I hope you have a great week.
I tell you what, Ron, I always enjoy doing this, and always enjoy getting the questions in and getting some information out there to the listeners, and I look forward to being back here next week.
Join us again next time for the next edition of the Financial Beat with Logan Sadler.
The information provided is for educational purposes only and is not intended as investment advice for anyone. All information discussed is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representation as to its completeness or accuracy. The views presented today are those of BD Financial Group and do not necessarily represent the views of Alpha Star Capital Management, LLC. The opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not constitute financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult with your financial professional before executing any financial strategy. Investment advisory and financial planning services are offered through Alpha Star Capital Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Alpha Star and BD Financial Group are independent entities. SEC registration does not constitute an endorsement of the firm by the Commission, nor does it indicate that the advisor has attained a particular level of skill or ability.